on a cold late afternoon in Rochester, Minnesota. The sky was covered with thick gray clouds, and the wind howled softly against the window pane. And the scent of cinnamon came from a candle burning on the sideboard in the living room, and the old radio played a faint instrumental tune I couldn't quite recognize. My name is Esther Morales. I'm 68 years old, and until recently, my life was built on safe routines, waking up early, making coffee, watering the plants, watching Mass online, calling my sister in Illinois. Small things that kept me grounded since my husband passed away 6 years ago. That day, I was sitting in my blue armchair, wrapped in my favorite shawl, a cup of chamomile tea in my hands and my phone resting on my lap. The dim winter light filtered through the curtains, and the ticking of the clock was the only movement in the room. That's when I heard the ping on my phone, a new message on Facebook. It was from a man named Thomas Miller. His profile picture showed a gray-haired man with a neatly trimmed beard and blue eyes, wearing a warm smile. He had on a carpenter's cap, and behind him were tools hanging on a wooden wall. The message read, "Good afternoon, Miss Esther. I saw your comment in the parish group, and something about you caught my attention. My name is Thomas. I'm a carpenter, also widowed. If you'd like to chat, I'm here." My heart skipped a little. I didn't usually talk to strangers online. The church group was my only connection to the outside world beyond my neighborhood. I hesitated for a few minutes. I clicked on his profile. I saw posts about faith, photos of furniture he claimed to have built, and a recent tribute to his mother, who had passed away. It all seemed legitimate, real. He even shared Bible verses. I replied cautiously, "Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas. Thank you for your message." Within seconds, he responded. He told me he lived in Iowa, that his daughter lived far away, and that woodworking was his therapy since losing his wife. He said he admired an older woman like me, so active in the church group, that my sweetness came through my words. His words were kind, disarming, and warm. We chatted for almost an hour. He asked questions about my life, my faith, my family. He said I deserved someone who truly saw me. He was gentle, attentive, and had a calm way of speaking that gave me a sense of safety. When he asked for my number to move the conversation to WhatsApp, I hesitated, but the way he expressed himself, so respectful, so delicate, made me give in. I shared the number. Afterward, I just sat there, staring at the dark screen of my phone. The house felt different, as if something had lit up inside it. I couldn't remember the last time I felt that kind of warmth in my chest. It was a childlike feeling, hope. I felt a bit foolish, of course, but at the same time, alive. That night, I made myself a simple sandwich and went to bed later than usual. Before falling asleep, I whispered a prayer I hadn't said in a long time. I asked God to protect me. That if this was a lie, He would give me the wisdom to see the signs. But if this was some form of a new beginning, that He wouldn't let my loneliness hold me back. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sun was barely rising behind the heavy clouds, casting a pale blue hue through the frosted windows of my bedroom. I reached for my phone before even putting on my slippers. My heart beat faster than I wanted to admit. There it was, his name, on the screen, Thomas Miller. He had sent a message at 6:02 a.m. "Good morning, beautiful Esther. I hope you slept well. I dreamed of you. You were smiling, and we were walking near a lake. I woke up missing someone I haven't even met yet." I stared at the screen for a long moment. No one had called me beautiful in years. I had forgotten how it felt. My fingers trembled a little as I typed back, "Good morning, Thomas. That's a sweet message. I hope you had a good night too." He answered instantly, like he was waiting. It's so rare to feel a connection like this. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I've known you for years. Your kindness, your calm, your words, they've stayed with me. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the beige carpet, feeling strange, warm, confused, happy, even. That day, I didn't rush through breakfast. I took my time making scrambled eggs and toast, humming to myself. The house felt less cold. I checked my phone at every chance. Thomas and I spoke all morning through WhatsApp. He sent voice notes, with that deep, steady voice, soothing, full of pauses, like a man who thought before he spoke. He said he was fixing a bookshelf for a friend, and that every nail he hammered reminded him of stability, of building something real, of building us. In the afternoon, we had a video call. I almost didn't do it. I worried about how I looked, my hair, my wrinkles, the way age shows on every inch of my face. But when I answered, there he was. Thomas. His voice matched his face perfectly. Calm eyes, soft smile, gray hair that curled slightly under his cap. He greeted me like we'd been meeting like this for years. You're even more beautiful than I imagined, he said. My cheeks flushed. I laughed awkwardly, brushing it off. But part of me wanted to believe him. Over the next few days, we talked constantly. Morning messages, midday calls, prayers shared at night. He told me about the house he wanted to build, a small cabin near a lake in Iowa. We could sit by the fireplace together. He whispered one night, with coffee in our hands and silence between us that feels like home. I knew it was fast, too fast, but something about the way he made me feel. Seen, desired, respected. It weakened my caution. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't pressure. He just showed up, every day, consistently, like someone who cared. I started telling my sister about him. She was skeptical, of course. Esther, please be careful. Online people can be anyone. I told her I understood, but that Thomas felt different. He felt safe. One night I told him about my husband. About how I held his hand while he died of cancer. I cried while speaking. Thomas didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said softly, I wish I could have been there to hold your other hand. That night, I didn't feel alone. For the first time in years, I turned off the lights without dreading the silence. I fell asleep holding the phone close to my chest, like it carried a warmth I'd forgotten existed. It had been almost 3 weeks since Thomas first messaged me. Every day, his presence in my life grew deeper, like a vine wrapping gently around my quiet world. We had a rhythm now. Morning prayers sent by text, mid-afternoon video calls, nighttime voice notes where he spoke softly about his dreams, his loneliness, and how meeting me had brought a kind of peace he thought he'd lost forever. I started adjusting my days to him without even noticing. I cleaned the house more thoroughly. I wore perfume again. I rearranged my furniture, adding flowers in the living room just in case I ever showed it to him on camera. He told me once, you make your home feel like a place where hearts could rest. I held on to that sentence like it was a poem written just for me. Then came the first small shift. One Thursday morning, Thomas sounded a bit different. His voice was slower, quieter. I asked if something was wrong, and he sighed. I didn't want to burden you, he said. It's just ... The project I've been working on, building a porch for a retired couple, it's been delayed. The hardware store made a mistake on my materials. I had to reorder, and I had to pay out of pocket. It's throwing off my budget a little. I felt a pinch in my stomach. Not worry, exactly concern. I asked if he was okay. He reassured me he'd figure it out. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept going back to his voice, the heaviness in it. I thought about how lonely he must be, about how hard it must be to work with your hands every day, with no one waiting at home to share your troubles. I remembered what it felt like when my own bills piled up after my husband died. That helpless feeling of drowning in small things. The next day, I asked again if everything had worked out. Thomas hesitated, then admitted, I'm still short about $1,500. I'm trying not to panic. I'll get through it. I always do. He didn't ask me for anything. Not directly, but his voice, ... It shook. And something inside me opened. Thomas, I typed, if you really need help, maybe I could lend you something, just until your payment comes through. No pressure, of course. He responded almost immediately. Esther, no. I would never want you to do that. You're too kind. I didn't mean to say anything to make you feel responsible. I'm just tired. It's been a long month. That made me feel even more compelled to help. Later that evening, he sent a voice message. I listened to it 3 times. His tone was soft, like someone gently brushing your shoulder. You are a blessing, Esther. Even just offering means more than I can explain. No one's ever done that for me before. I'm not used to kindness without strings. The next day, I wired him the $1,500. I didn't even tell my sister. I told myself it was just a loan. He promised to pay me back in 2 weeks. He even sent me a photo of the receipt from the hardware store. I believed him. I wanted to. That weekend, I caught myself smiling more than usual. I baked banana bread. I called an old friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Thomas thanked me every day, told me I was his angel. Asterisk, I thought I was helping someone I cared about. I thought that kind of goodness would return to me. I had no idea I'd just unlocked the door to something much darker. Asterisk, 2 weeks passed. And Thomas didn't mention the money again. I didn't bring it up either. He continued to call every morning, still sent prayers and compliments, still called me my light and my safe place. But something in me waited. Watched asterisk then one afternoon, while I was folding laundry and listening to one of his voice notes, he said something that made me pause. Asterisk, I wish I could take you out to dinner. Esther, he said. You deserve candlelight, and music and someone holding your hand. One day, when all this financial mess clears, I'll make it happen. I promise. Asterisk, it sounded sweet, romantic, even. But under it, I felt a twinge, a gap between the promise and reality. I wanted it to be real. I wanted to believe there was someone out there who would still choose me. A woman whose hands were wrinkled, whose legs ached from arthritis, whose nights were mostly spent in silence. Asterisk, the next day, he called again. He was stressed. Said his truck had broken down while driving between job sites. He explained it in detail, the sound it made, the smoke that came out of the hood, the garage that gave him the estimate. It's always something, he sighed. I swear, sometimes I think life is just testing how much a man can take. Asterisk, I stayed quiet. He didn't ask, but I knew what was coming. Asterisk, that night, I opened my online banking app. I stared at the numbers. I had $61,000 in savings. It had taken me years to get there. After George died, I cut every corner. No more vacations. I stopped renewing my magazine subscriptions. I bought off-brand everything. That money was supposed to be for emergencies. Or maybe, just maybe, a trip to visit my grandchildren someday. Asterisk, I wired Thomas another $2,000. He thanked me with a voice message that made me cry. Asterisk, you don't know what this means to me. Esther, he said, voice trembling. You didn't just save my truck. You saved my dignity. You're not just a woman to me. You're my blessing. My miracle. After that, things escalated. Asterisk, first, it was the carpenter's license he needed to renew. Then it was a delayed payment from a client who disappeared without paying, a cousin in the hospital. A short-term loan he needed to repay to avoid legal trouble. Each time he explained it in such detailed names, numbers, even pictures, receipts, invoices, photos of hospital beds. Everything looked real. Everything felt real. Asterisk, by the time I realized how deep I was in, I had sent him. It happened in pieces, like sand, slipping through my fingers, a little more each day. Asterisk, my sister started asking questions. She noticed how often I was checking my phone, how distracted I became. I told her I was just talking to a friend. She looked at me, long and hard. Asterisk, Esther, she said, don't do something you'll regret. Asterisk, but I had already done it. And I was about to do worse. Asterisk, one evening, Thomas sent me a message that said, I want to come see you. Asterisk, I froze. My heart pounded. He said he had a job lined up in Minneapolis, just a short drive from Rochester. He could stay in a motel, come visit for a day or two. Finally see the woman who'd stolen his heart. Asterisk, but the motel, the gas, the food, the time off work, it was too expensive right now. Unless, ... Asterisk, I sent him $3,000 more. Asterisk, I wanted to see him. I needed this to be real. I thought that once he stood in front of me, everything would make sense. I was wrong. The day Thomas said he would arrive, I cleaned the house top to bottom. I swept every corner, polished the wood floors, even ironed the white lace tablecloth I hadn't used in years. I baked a lemon cake from scratch, the same one I used to make for George's birthday. The house smelled warm and soft, like memory and hope mixed together. Asterisk, I wore my nicest blouse, pale blue with delicate embroidery near the collar. I curled my hair. I applied a bit of lipstick, something I hadn't done in so long. The tube felt foreign in my hands. I even sprayed a touch of perfume behind my ears. Asterisk, Thomas said he would arrive by 4 p.m. Asterisk, at 3:45. I sat on the living room sofa, hands folded on my lap, eyes flicking between the clock and the front window. Outside, the wind rustled the dried leaves along the curb. The light was golden, calm. I imagined him walking up the steps, tool bag slung over his shoulder. That familiar, warm smile on his face. Asterisk at 4:15. I messaged him, no response. At 4:30, I called. Asterisk it rang 3 times, then went to voicemail. Asterisk I stared at the phone, frowning. Maybe his battery died. Maybe he got lost. He was driving from another state after all. Accidents happen. Delays are normal. I waited. Asterisk at 5 o'clock. I sent another message, just checking if everything is okay. I'm here when you arrive. I kept the porch light on, just in case. By 7 p.m., the lemon cake had cooled completely. The tea had gone cold. The perfume on my skin had faded. At 9:12 p.m., a message finally came. Esther, I'm so sorry. Something terrible happened. My truck broke down just outside Des Moines. I had to call a tow. I spent hours waiting. I'm at a roadside motel now. I'm exhausted. I promise I'll make it up to you. I'm so sorry. Asterisk, I sat at the table, phone in hand, reading the message over and over. The disappointment sat in my chest like wet cement. Still, I typed back. I'm glad you're safe. Let me know if you need anything. He answered right away. I hate to even say this, but the motel took everything I had left. And the tow bill I don't know how I'm going to get back. On the road. I'm embarrassed to ask. Please don't feel pressured. I didn't hesitate. I transferred $5,000. Asterisk my hands didn't shake anymore. That scared me later, how natural it had started to feel. As if this was just part of something, real, part of love. Helping him felt like helping myself. Like proving that I could still be needed. That I could matter. Asterisk after sending the money, he sent a voice message. I played it again and again. Asterisk, you're my angel, Esther. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I thank God every night. I love you. Asterisk, I hadn't heard those words in years. Not from a man, not from anyone who said it with the voice of someone who meant it. Asterisk, I love you too. I whispered to no one. Asterisk that night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch in my blue blouse, surrounded by untouched cake and cooling tea. Watching the porch light flicker in the wind, waiting for someone who wouldn't come. Asterisk still believing. Somewhere, deep inside, that maybe next time he would. Asterisk the days after that night, blurred together like fog on glass. I stopped checking the time. The lemon cake eventually went stale, untouched, on the counter. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It felt like giving up on something I hadn't admitted was already lost. Thomas messaged me less. He said he was trying to sort things out, that he needed space to focus, that motel Wi-Fi was unreliable, but his words still came with tenderness, always ending with, I miss you, or you're all I have. That was enough to keep me waiting. A week passed, then 2. He said he was back on the road, working small jobs, trying to catch up. I offered to help again. He said no, not this time. Then the next day, he said he had a chance to invest in a bigger project, a custom staircase commission for a wealthy client in Omaha but needed funds to secure materials up front. It's a big step, he said, but this could be what gets me back on my feet, Esther. And when that happens, I'll come to you. For real, this time. I wired him $10,000. It was the largest amount yet. My hands hovered over the send button longer than before, but I still pressed it. I told myself it was a leap of faith, that love sometimes required risk, that I would regret not helping more than I'd regret helping. He thanked me profusely, as always. But the words felt lighter now, like paper instead of wood, something hollow in them. The next few days, I heard nothing, no messages, no calls. I sent 3, then 5, then 7 texts. I stared at the green check marks on WhatsApp, praying for them to turn blue. They never did. One morning, I tried calling. The number rang once, then cut off. I tried again, straight to voicemail. I waited until nightfall. Still nothing. I barely ate. The house became quiet in a different way, no longer peaceful, but haunted. Like it, too, was holding its breath with me. I called the motel where he'd last stayed, the one from Des Moines. A woman with a scratchy voice told me no one named Thomas Miller had checked in for weeks. My heart sank. I opened our Facebook messages. His profile was gone. Just gone. No name, no picture, no history, like he'd never existed. I stared at the empty space where his face used to be, hands trembling. I tried to breathe but felt something tight closing around my chest. I checked the photos he'd sent, the tools, the carpentry, the invoices. I looked more closely than I ever had. One of the images had been cropped. Another had strange text in the corner. I dragged one into Google and did a reverse image search. It wasn't his. It belonged to a Canadian carpenter who had a YouTube channel. A real man, a different name, a different life. My stomach turned. I dropped the phone. I sat there for hours, unmoving, like a statue built from shame. I had sent him everything, a total of $40,000. I kept trying to remember the moment I crossed the line, the second where help became surrender, where love became delusion. But it wasn't one moment. It was hundreds. Small, kind, gentle steps into the dark. And now there was no voice, no apology, no closure, just silence. He had vanished. And in his place, he left me with something worse than absence. He left me with doubt. In others, in myself, in everything. Asterisk. The morning after I confirmed he was gone, the house no longer felt like mine. I walked through each room as if I were trespassing in someone else's life. The curtains seemed too bright, the walls too close. Every object felt suspicious. The lemon cake, now rock hard, on the counter, remained untouched. I couldn't throw it away. I couldn't clean the coffee mug he never used. I left everything exactly as it had been on the day he was supposed to arrive. I think some part of me believed that if I didn't disturb the scene, the truth would remain unspoken. But silence is its own kind of confession. My sister called, that day. I let the phone ring until it stopped. She texted next. Esther, are you okay? I stared at the words. I could have replied. I could have told her everything, but how do you explain falling in love with someone who never existed? How do you confess that you weren't just fooled, you were willing? I didn't respond. That night, I sat in my bedroom in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the heater switch on and off. I couldn't sleep. When I did, I dreamed of voices with no faces, hands that vanished when I reached for them. I woke with my heart racing, unsure if I had screamed aloud. Days passed. I stopped opening the curtains. I didn't water the plants. I didn't attend online mass. I deleted the Facebook app. Not because I stopped hoping, but because hope had turned into a kind of poison. The thought of hearing his voice again made me physically ill. Still, I would reach for my phone 10 times a day, like a muscle memory that refused to fade. I began to avoid mirrors. I didn't want to see what I had become. I imagined people looking at me and thinking, how stupid. How could she fall for that? But I knew they would never say it aloud. Pity is always silent. I tried to distract myself, TV, puzzles, even baking, but nothing held. The grief was too thick, too raw. It wasn't just about the money. It was the trust, the intimacy, the illusion that someone, somewhere, had chosen me again. I wasn't just mourning Thomas. I was mourning the woman I had been in his presence. The one who had smiled again, who had dared to believe that her heart still had worth. That version of me was gone too. One afternoon, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the window, holding a butter knife I didn't remember picking up. My hands were cold, my knees weak. I put the knife down slowly, ashamed of the thought that flickered, uninvited, at the edge of my mind. I called my doctor the next day. I asked for an appointment. When she asked what it was for, I said the words I never imagined I'd say out loud. I think I'm depressed. I need help. She saw me within 48 hours. I sat across from her, eyes red, hands clenched, whispering parts of the story. Not all. Just enough to explain the weight in my chest. She nodded gently, handed me a prescription, gave me the name of a therapist. I took the paper with shaking fingers. I didn't cry in the office, but I cried in the car. Not because I felt hope, but because it was the first time in weeks I felt anything at all. The silence was starting to lift, but only slightly. The room was still hollow, and I was still inside it. Asterisk, mornings became the hardest. Before Thomas, I used to wake early, even if I had nothing to do. Now, I lay in bed long after the sun had risen, listening to the creaks of the house. The distant hum of passing cars, the occasional chirp of a bird, confused by winter. I didn't want to get up. Not because I was tired, but because there was nothing to move toward. The silence that once felt peaceful now pressed on my chest like a weight. I stopped answering the phone altogether. My sister left voicemails, each more worried than the last. Esther, please, just tell me you're okay. I wasn't, but I didn't want to say it out loud again. I didn't want to see the pity in anyone's eyes, even hers. I filled my prescriptions, as the doctor had instructed. The pills sat in the kitchen cabinet for 3 days before I finally took one. The first made me dizzy. The second gave me a headache, but I kept going, because the emptiness scared me more than the side effects. Therapy started the following week. Her name was Marla. She had soft eyes and didn't interrupt when I spoke. I told her about the money slowly first, a mention of losing savings. Then later the exact number. $40,000. Saying it out loud made me shake. But she didn't flinch. She said, "That kind of loss, ... It's not just financial, it's betrayal. It's heartbreak. It's trauma." I nodded, unable to find words. I didn't want to call myself a victim. It sounded too dramatic, too final, but I didn't feel like a survivor either. Survivors feel strong. I felt like a ghost. In our second session, I confessed something I hadn't told anyone. That even after everything, some part of me still checked my phone. Still hoped to see a message. Not because I believed he'd come back, but because I wanted to be wrong. I wanted it to have been real, even if just one part of it. Marla said that was common. That when we attach ourselves to someone, especially after deep loneliness, the bond forms quickly and shatters slowly. I cried in her office that day. I didn't apologize for it. The tears came without warning, like a faucet that had finally rusted loose. I told her how I'd stopped praying. That I felt like God had looked away when I needed him most. That maybe I deserved it for being so naive, so desperate. She held my silence carefully, then said, "You didn't deserve this. And your faith isn't broken. It's grieving too." I didn't respond, but I wrote the sentence down later in a notebook. I read it again that night, when the loneliness came, as it always did, with the sunset. The neighbors had put up Christmas lights. Their windows glowed with soft reds and golds. Families gathering, children laughing. I stood at my own window in the dark, watching. I wondered what they would think if they knew the woman next door had given her heart to a man who didn't exist. If they knew she'd lost more than money, that she'd lost the voice that used to hum songs in the kitchen. The woman who once whispered prayers while watering geraniums. That night, I forced myself to eat. Soup from a can, crackers, a single glass of water. I lit the cinnamon candle, again, the one I hadn't touched since he vanished. Its scent filled the room slowly. I didn't feel comforted, but I felt something. A small return of air to my lungs. And in this world I no longer trusted, that was enough to keep breathing. Asterisk. Winter passed slowly. Each day bled into the next, gray upon gray, like a sky that had forgotten how to lift. I kept going to therapy. I took my medication, even on the days when it felt like swallowing disappointment. I started walking again, down the block and back. At first, I told myself it was for the fresh air, but I think I just needed to prove to myself that I still had legs. That I could still move forward, even if I didn't know where forward was. One morning, in early March, I saw the first sign of thaw, a patch of grass peeking through the melting snow by my neighbor's mailbox. It wasn't beautiful. It was brown and crooked and half dead, but it was there. It made me stop and stare for a long moment. When I got home, I watered the plants. I had nearly let die. Most were beyond saving, but one geranium had survived, pale and clinging. I trimmed the dry leaves, whispered an apology, and moved it closer to the window. I didn't cry. Not then. But later that night, I sat in the living room and wept not from sadness, but from some strange mix of shame, gratitude, and exhaustion, the kind of cry that leaves you empty, but clean. My sister came to visit the following week. I didn't warn her. She knocked softly, holding a paper bag with fresh bread and a container of soup. I hadn't seen her since before Thomas. I opened the door and stood there, unsure what to say. She didn't speak. She just stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. I stiffened at first. Then I let go. I let her hold me while my knees gave out. We sat at the kitchen table, the soup steaming gently between us. I told her everything. All of it. The messages, the money, the promises, the voice notes, the silence. She didn't scold me. She didn't say I told you so. She held my hand and whispered, "It's okay. You don't have to carry this alone." That night, I slept for 8 hours straight. No nightmares, no checking my phone. No dreams of men with warm eyes and empty hands. Just sleep. I started cooking again, simple things, rice, beans, roasted carrots. I even tried a banana bread recipe, different from my usual one. I didn't bake it for anyone, just for me. In therapy, I began talking about the time before Thomas, about George. about the years of silence after his death, the hunger I hadn't named, the longing I had buried under, "I'm fine." Marla listened. She reminded me gently, "You were not stupid. You were lonely. And you believed in goodness." I wanted to argue, but the part of me that used to flinch now only nodded. The part of me that used to blame now listened. One afternoon, I deleted Thomas's voice messages. I didn't plan it. I just opened the folder and pressed down on the first one. A menu popped up. Delete. I tapped yes, then the next, one by one, until the folder was empty. I stared at the blank screen, waiting for regret. It didn't come, only quiet. That night, I lit the cinnamon candle again, not to remember him, but to reclaim the scent for myself. I opened the curtains and let the moonlight in, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel watched, or foolish, or waiting. I just felt like a woman in her home. Healing, spring, came slowly that year, as if the earth itself had forgotten how to begin again. The snow melted, the sky lightened, and small green shoots pushed through the soil like fingers reaching for something warmer. I spent more time outside. I didn't go far, just the porch, mostly. Sometimes the front steps. I'd sit with a cup of tea, feeling the air on my skin, letting it remind me that I still had a body, still had breath, still had mornings. People waved as they passed. Some stopped to chat. Others just nodded. I answered softly, but I answered. The house no longer felt like a mausoleum. It wasn't full of life. Not yet, but the walls had stopped echoing so loudly. I planted new flowers in the front garden, marigolds, lavender, a new geranium to replace the one that didn't survive. I didn't plant them for anyone to see. Not for neighbors. Not for a man, just for me. A way to mark that I was still here. Still trying. I never got the money back. I filed a police report. I gave them every detail, every screenshot, every wire transfer, every name and number he used. They nodded. They took notes. They told me, gently, that it was unlikely anything would come of it. These men knew how to vanish. He was probably already someone else, using a new voice, a new story, finding a new woman who needed to believe in something. I thanked them anyway. Not because I thought it would help, but because it felt like a small reclaiming of my voice. The shame never fully left. It still lingers, in quiet corners of my mind. When I'm alone, too long, when I reread old messages I should have questioned. When I look at the space where my savings used to live, but I carry it now, like an old injury, not bleeding, not fresh, but aching when the weather shifts. I don't date, I don't trust easily. Sometimes I wonder if I ever truly will again. But I go to therapy. I take my pills. I light my candles. I water my plants. I let my sister come over. I let myself be loved, even if it's quiet. Even if it's not the way I once dreamed. And when the wind brushes the side of the house just right, and I hear a low voice in my memory, saying, "You're my angel," I don't answer anymore. I let it pass. I let it go. Not because I've forgotten, but because I've decided not to bleed for someone who never existed. Some days are better than others. There are mornings when the tea tastes warm, the radio plays something soft, and I find myself humming without realizing it. And there are days when the weight comes back. When I sit too long at the table, staring at nothing, remembering everything. That's the part no one tells you. You don't get over it, you carry it. You learn how to balance it so it doesn't crush you. But it's always there. A shadow where a man once pretended to stand. I still light the cinnamon candle. I still wear the blue blouse sometimes, just for myself. I still sit on the porch, at dusk, watching the light fade through the trees. And in those quiet moments, when the world forgets me and I forget the world, I let myself grieve not for him, but for the woman I was before. And I let that be enough.